Our next key partner is Kevin Lockett. And I got to tell you guys, these folks' resumes are so robust that I'm really not even doing them service. It's incredible some of the things these folks have done. But in short, Kevin joined the Kauffman Foundation in 2004 and became an associate in 2006. During that time, he raised angel investment funds for Kansas City businesses, provided direction for the Minority Entrepreneurship Division, served as a UEP business coach. He currently serves as the Chief Operations Officer for the Urban Entrepreneur Partnership, Inc., UEP. Please give a warm welcome to Kevin Lockett.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's truly a pleasure to be here. Whenever we open up UEP sites, we will have an event like this, and I have to say that this is by far the best turnout that we've gotten in any community that we've opened a site. So my hat's off to all of you who have taken your time throughout this lunch period to attend. On behalf of the Kauffman Foundation, the Urban Entrepreneur Partnership, and our CEO, Daryl Williams, I'm very pleased to be here. Very excited to announce our partnership with Suncoast Community Capital to be able to bring the UEP's business coaching services to the Manatee and to the Sarasota counties. Some of you may or may not be familiar with Kauffman and with UEP, and so I'll start with Kauffman. Kauffman is a private foundation that is about a $2 billion foundation in Kansas City that primarily focuses on education and on entrepreneurship. And so for the longest period of time, Kauffman has really been interested in the growth of small businesses really from three perspectives. One, from a funding perspective, two, from a research and policy perspective, and then three, from a programmatic perspective. So when you look at the funding perspective, what they've been known to do is to really scour the country looking for the most innovative programs that exist that help small businesses in terms of growth. And so they provided numerous grants to organizations across the country, all with the idea that it almost serves as sort of seed money for those organizations to expand on their programs in hopes that it becomes nationally replicated. From a research and policy perspective, Kauffman's given numerous grants over the years, primarily to academia, to perform a lot of research and to provide data that can be used so that small business community starts to become included in the conversations when policymakers are creating laws and regulations. And then from a programmatic standpoint, Kauffman has always been interested in creating its own sort of world-class programs, and so that's where the UEP comes in. UEP is one of 5 or 6 programs that was created in-house inside of Kauffman. Like most Kauffman programs, after some success, it spun out and became its own organization. And so let me give you just a little bit of history of UEP so you understand exactly what it is that's coming to this county. When we first started UEP, which was in 2005, there were really 4 things that we listed on the board that we wanted to make sure were taken into account as we built this model. One, it had to be research-based. Anything you see that comes from Kauffman is always going to be research-based. Secondly, it had to be data-driven. Same thing. Anything that comes out of that foundation is going to be data-driven. The third thing was we wanted to take an approach with our coaching that we kind of coined the phrase of economic development through entrepreneurship, and I'll explain a little bit about that more in a bit. And then lastly, the fourth thing was we wanted to make sure we took an approach that wasn't a one-size-fits-all. We didn't want a cookie-cutter approach. We had to have a program that was going to be flexible, it was going to be fluid, and would be able to adapt to whatever community it was going to be introduced to. And so I'll start with the results with the research-based approach. So before we did anything, the first thing we did is a bunch of research out of the Research and Policy Division of Kauffman. And much of what I'm going to say you've heard before, I've read in reports, but really to sum it all up, there were 3 major obstacles or challenges that we saw small businesses across the country were facing. One was access to capital, one was access to what I'll call growth markets, and then last was access to adequate training. And so as we sat in a room around a table trying to figure out what role UEP could play in those 3 areas, the one that came to mind as the challenge was the access to the adequate training, with the idea that if we provided world-class coaching to these small businesses, medium-sized businesses, that we could begin to break down some of these barriers in regards to access to capital and access to these growth markets. And so that was the first thing that we decided, that we're going to focus on coaching these businesses. And so consequently, by no mistake, did we bring in our first 2 coaches that we hired were individuals who spent a considerable amount of time at McKinsey and at Booz Allen. Our belief is that if you want these small businesses and medium businesses to grow, you got to give them the best. You got to give them the same thing that the larger businesses have access to. And so those individuals came in, helped build not only our curriculum, our training, how we go about our approach, but then also they took a look at, how are we going to make sure that number 2 is taken care of, which is the fact that it's data-driven. So as a result, everyone that participates in a UEP program, we track roughly somewhere around about 250 different data variables on each entrepreneur that participates. Why do we do this? 3 purposes, really. Kauffman, their number 1 interest is to be able to always look at data on small businesses across the country so they can understand better what the landscape looks like. Secondly, UEP uses it to be able to understand the community that it's in. So how can we continue to better understand the Manatee and the Sarasota counties in terms of the small and medium-sized businesses that we're working with and what it is that they need so we can meet their expectations. And then third, we use it from a UEP perspective to be able to, I talked about having a flexible, a fluid program, to be able to change our offering so that we're making sure we're meeting expectations. As most of you all know, some of you are probably entrepreneurs, things change in the wind. And we want to be able to have a program that's flexible enough that's able to deliver exactly what our clients are looking for. Our third item was this term that we talked about, was economic development through entrepreneurship. And so what does that mean? There are so many definitions of what economic development is. And one of the thoughts that comes out of the foundation is this economic development through entrepreneurship. And so what that means from a UEP perspective is a couple of things. One, when we go in and we perform our coaching with these businesses, the first thing we do is we identify probably 2 or 3 different types of groups of businesses. Usually what you'll find businesses that I'll call sort of pillars in the community. They're businesses that have been there for a while. Maybe they've plateaued a bit, but with a little bit of coaching, maybe some access to some new markets, they can experience some growth and have an effect on the economy. But then secondly, what we look for is we look for those young, kind of energetic, small businesses that, or even ideas that have yet to really come to fruition and blossom, and we put all of those groups together. And that's the population that ends up receiving this coaching that's going to take place here in these counties. Now, how is it a little bit different? Well, one of the things we also try to do in this approach is not to take what I'll call a consultant approach. Many of you are probably consultants for other organizations, and if you're paid for your work, you know that you're primarily paid by delivering a service, but not necessarily doing what I'll call transferring the knowledge, okay? You really don't want them to know how you did it. You just want them to know it's fixed, so they'll come back to you and pay you again, okay? Well, the UEP approach is slightly different. The UEP approach is about transferring knowledge. And so it's not only about identifying the issue with the business owner, developing a plan to help them be able to overcome that challenge, and then helping them implement, but it's also about transferring knowledge from the coaching perspective to that entrepreneur, which is why we require the head person or the CEO of all of these organizations has to be the one that's participating in the program, okay? And so what we do is we want to work about transferring knowledge, because our belief is if UEP is not here in this county in 5 years or 10 years or whatever it is, if we've been able to work with X number of businesses over those 5 or 10 years, and in each one of them, we've been able to help build the capacity and the knowledge, not only putting the foundation in place for those businesses to experience growth, but to also transfer the knowledge on how to do so. Now, all of a sudden, what you've done is you've uplifted the entire small business community in terms of how to do that. One thing I think we all know is entrepreneurs are serial. You'll hear from Michael Levin here shortly, and he's a perfect example. Entrepreneurs may have a business, and they've got 95 other ideas that are right in the other side of their brain. And so whether that means they create 5 other businesses, 10 other businesses, or they just create 5 or 10 new product lines, our belief is that if you come to UEP and you get assistance for a certain item, let's say, through your first encounter, you really shouldn't have to come back to UEP for that same encounter. I'll give you a brief example. If we work with someone and one of the issues happens to be marketing, and we go through a process where we help them understand how you research markets to determine what are your vertical markets, how do you research who the top 5 customers would be within those markets, and then how do you build a marketing plan and a strategy to identify and go after and target those top 5 customers. Our belief is that if you've done that, you shouldn't have to come back to us for that same thing again. And so if you create 5 or 6 other businesses, at least that aspect of the business, you now understand how to do that on your own and shouldn't have to come back. Now, does that mean things don't change? Absolutely not. You'll have items like the introduction of social media, and that definitely affects the area of marketing. So there'll be a touch-up maybe in terms of how does social media now affect the marketing, but the basics or the understanding of how to go through that process and perform that research and find out whether or not your idea is valid or not, or if there's a market for your product or service, that should be instituted in the entrepreneur. And so that's sort of what we mean when we talk about economic development through entrepreneurship. And then the last item is that we don't want to take this cookie cutter approach. If you look at our other 4 sites, we're in Kansas City, we're in New Orleans, we're in Baton Rouge, and we're in Detroit. And if you look at each one of them, they all have somewhat the same mission, same purpose, which is to generally uplift or build the capacity of the business community that's there so that they can attribute more to the local economy. But they're all differently. They're all run different. They all operate different. If you look at Kansas City, we are very basic in nature and it's very focused. We primarily work with small businesses to do a couple of things. 1, the focus is on increasing jobs. 2, it's on increasing revenues. And 3, it's on increasing profits. That's pretty much the basic of what we do in Kansas City. And consequently, our clientele is roughly anywhere from startup to about $20 million companies, if you take a few outliers out. You go down to New Orleans and Baton Rouge, completely different population. Our purpose in being there is to deal with the businesses that were affected by the hurricanes. And so as a result, our businesses there are startups, what I'll even call restartups, people who were in startup mode and then the hurricanes came, wiped them out, they're starting up again. Anywhere from startup to roughly $4 or $5 million. You go look at what we're doing in Detroit, it's very specific. We're there working purely with automotive suppliers because of the downturn in the auto industry to help them transform or retool into alternative energy, aerospace, homeland defense, healthcare. Clientele there, largest client is about $750 million. It's a wide range of folks that we have. I believe we just did a study of our folks in Detroit, and I think our average size business is about $280, $285 million. So wide range of folks that we work with. But what we do is we make sure that we build each program around each project, if you will. And then we staff it accordingly so that we're able to produce. So our work here through the partners that we've been working with to get this thing implemented, I believe that our UEP site here is going to closely mirror the work that we do in Kansas City. It's primarily going to be focused on job creation. It's going to be focused on increasing revenue. It's going to be focused on increasing profitability. And so one thing you'll find out about UEP, if there's one metric that we capture that's the most important to us, and everybody captures a bunch of different stuff, for us, we believe it's profitability because we think everything else stems from profitability. So if we can make you more profitable by making you operationally more efficient, great. If we can do it by growing revenue, fantastic. There's all kinds of ways to do it, but our belief is if you give the entrepreneurs more money to the bottom line, now they've got money to do a ton of things. They can create jobs, they can recycle it throughout the community, and now you can begin to develop your local economy. So we're very, very excited to be here. We're very excited about the work that lies before us. I will say from the few that I've met to date, I thank you all for all the community buy-in that's taken place to date. For those of you that have not joined, we really hope that you also join us on this journey. And again, we're excited. We know it's a lot of hard work, but our folks are ready.